I'm here today to pour libations to the Creator, no matter what name you call the Creator. And I'm here today to pour libations to the ancestors. First, I want to give an offering to the Creator. Next, I want to give an offering to the ancestors. We pour libations to the Creator no matter what you call the Creator. Whether it's Obatala, Shango, Oya, Oshun, whether you call it Asar, Aset, or Haru, whether you call it Yahweh, Jehovah, Allah, we pour libations to the gods, to the God and goddesses. Ashe. Next, we pour libations to our loved ones who have passed away. And I'm going to name just a few right now. My father, Omar Wilks. Ashe. My grandmother, Leona Carway. Ashe. My aunt, Hermione Henderson. We pour libations to Hermione Henderson. Ashe. We pour libations to a person who is a grandmother to me. Estella Terry. We pour libations to Estella Terry. Ashe. We pour libations to my uncle who just passed away, Larry. Ashe. We pour libations to my grandmother. My grandmother, who was brought through the Middle Passage, who was brought through the transatlantic apocalypse, which happens to be the worst Holocaust in world history. My grandmother, who was brought through the door of no return to these shores right here. We will never forget what the ancestors had to endure. They were forced into the bottom of slave ships, rat-infested slave ships. There was women who were enslaved, who were put in the bottom of slave ships and had their babies on slave ships. And we pour libations to them. We pour libations to all the little children who have died right here in the Middle Passage. I remember reading about a mother who was right in this area. And the enslaver came to this mother because he wanted to enslave this mother. And she had her little baby in her arms. And what this enslaver did was rip this mother's child out of her arms and killed the baby right here on these shores. This is a crime scene right here. This is a sacred location because so much blood has been spilt right here in Bimbia. We pour libations to that little child that was killed right here on these shores. Ashe. We pour libations to the men who didn't want to see their women torn away from them. And so they was willing to fight to the death because they weren't willing to see their women being taken away from them. They weren't willing to see their children to be taken away from them. Can you imagine how it feels to be a husband and to watch your children being stripped out of your arms? Can you imagine? We pour libations to all the men who stood up like men. And all the men in general, who wasn't able to survive the Middle Passage. We say Ashe to them. We pour libations to the warrior queens, the women who didn't go down without a fight. It is recorded that the women went down with a fight because they weren't willing to be sent into the bowels of slave ships and brought to an unknown land that would not respect them. And so we say ashe to all of the women who stood tall as warrior queens. We say ashe to them. I remember reading about a little boy who was taken from the shores of Cameroon, and while he was en route on the transatlantic apocalypse, these white men shot this little boy. They shot him. He was still alive. And you know what they did? They threw him over the side, and he was eaten by sharks. We pour libations to that little boy who died. We pour libations to that little boy who died, who was thrown over the side. We pour libations to all of the ancestors who were thrown into the waters. From here all the way to across the Atlantic, there are bones going all the way across the Atlantic. We pour libations to all of them whose bones are still at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Ashe. And right now, this was so severe that it changed the migration patterns of the sharks, because they smelt the blood, they smelt the stench of the blood in the water. We will never forget this Holocaust. We will never forget this apocalypse that happened to our people. We will never forget all of the men, women, and children who had to walk the trail of tears from inner Africa all the way to the shores, to be taken, to be brutalized, as Mr. Bimbia said, and babies being killed, babies being forced over there to endure the hot sun. We say ashe to them. Ashe. 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 Thank you.